In this video, I'm going to talk about why you want to stop assigning tasks to your team member and start assigning outcomes. And what does that mean? So basically, if you're the only person who can solve problems in your business, you're going to hit a ceiling, you're going to hit a wall because there's only so much one person can do and you can't grow beyond your personal capacity. And the reason is not your team, even though many business owners will complain they can't find good people, it's hard to find good people, or I'm the only one who can do this, or I do it the best, so it's fast if I do it, and that sort of stuff. But it's not your team, it's what you're asking them to do. You probably have a non-optimal approach to delegating work, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Let me show you how delegation looks like in most businesses. So it's going to go something like this, right? Let's say you want to delegate your Instagram account or like posting on social media. You're going to say, all right, I want you to post 3 times on Instagram this week. I want you to respond to all the comments, and I want you to create 2 reels and this many images or maybe a carousel and so on, right? And then you're going to assign it, and then you're going to check how they did it. They're going to probably come to you all the time like, hey, do you like this one? Do you think this is good? Hey, somebody's leaving a comment. What should I say? I don't know exactly what to say. That sort of stuff, right? And they'll do it, and maybe it's working. If you have a good person, all right, so they can do it, but you're still heavily involved, right? You're deciding what to post, you're reviewing the content, you're answering the questions, and if nothing else, you're still like checking the tasks all the time, right? Moving them in your Asana or ClickUp or whatever you're using. And basically, it still depends on you, even though you're not doing the legwork, so to speak. But so here's the thing. So maybe this thing gets results, right? Because task delegation can work, right? But it doesn't free you up to the extent that you would think and want. And if you want to create a business that runs without you, right? Because you now just go from being the worker to being the manager, and you're micromanaging stuff, and it doesn't free you up because now you have to make sure that the person is doing a good job. You need to assign a task, otherwise they'll forget about it. Or maybe you want to launch something new and say, hey, let's start doing this on Instagram. I saw this course or whatever YouTube video and we should start doing this. And you're just like heavily involved. It doesn't really free you up. And the main problem is you're doing probably this across the board. If you have a few different team members in any business, there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done, right? So you got social media, customer service, ads, fulfillment, product development, sales calls, whatever it is, right? So you're the brain behind like 10 or more different things, and you're telling people what to do. You're checking if they did it. You're coming up with solutions when things break. You're coming up with like just new solutions that, hey, we should try this. We haven't been doing this, and that sort of stuff, right? So each area maybe gets 5 to 10% of your attention, right? Because you're one person and you need to take care of all these different things. You're wearing so many hats. Each area gets like a fraction of your attention, while the person that you hired to do the job, they could become an expert in that one area, right? So they can give it 100% focus, or if let's say they're doing a couple of different things in your business, they can still give it a lot more focus than you can. They could get way better than you ever could because you've got other things to take care of, right? You got other things that are pulling your attention in different directions. Not to mention, you have to run the entire business, right? But they can't do it if you're still the brain, if you're still deciding every move, or if you're still just even being involved too much, right? Because then you become the bottleneck, and it might not be because you're micromanaging necessarily, right? But the micromanagement causes you to be spread too thin across different areas of your business. And at the same time, it's taking away responsibility and initiative from your team members. So when you add all this up, this is how your week looks like, right? You're making decisions for 10 different areas. You're checking if people did what you told them to do and if they're on time or if they're behind. If you're working with VAs, you don't know when they're going to get it done, right? Maybe you're waiting for days and you're not really sure. That's frustrating. You need to keep checking up. You're coming up with solutions when things break. That's a big one. So like you're still the one responsible for fixing stuff and like driving the stuff forward, even though somebody else is actually pushing the button, so to speak. And you're the only person who sees the full picture. So that means you have no time for strategy, no room to grow, because you got to do all these other different things, right? You might think, but I'm doing strategy. I'm deciding what we'll post on social media or how sales calls should be done or how to generate more leads. I'm thinking about all these different things. Yeah, that's not the strategy that your business needs from you as the CEO to grow forward, right? You need to lead the team and design the systems, and then let people who you put in place for different areas of your business drive the strategy for that particular small thing, right? That's how you do it. That's how you drive the strategy. You should be thinking about the meta strategy of your business. How do you create the machine that's going to develop all these processes and put team members in place that can execute on the processes, and in which direction you want the whole ship to go? That's the strategic work that you need to be doing as a CEO. And if you're doing all this other stuff, you're really abdicating your responsibility, in my opinion. Like then your business doesn't really have anybody who's focused on the big picture 100% of the time. So that's missing. So anyway, maybe with 1 or 2 people, you'll get away with it because there's not that much to manage. You can still assign quickly tasks, and that frees you up for a few hours or maybe a day or 2. But when you have 5 people, it becomes like a full-time job, right? It's basically impossible. So you've hired a team but you're still doing all the thinking, which means sometimes people will say, I hired a person and now I need to check their work. I need to train them. I need to tell them what to do. And I need to keep doing this. It's like a never-ending cycle. And basically, it was just easier when I did it myself. It was faster. I didn't have to train anybody. It was done exactly how I like it. Blah, blah, blah. All this sort of nonsense, right? Like that, you can't grow. Then again, you're just back to being like the bottleneck for everything because you're responsible for it and so on. So what you actually want to do is a different approach, and that's you start delegating outcomes and not tasks, right? So you want to say something like, I don't care how you do it, right? I just want you to hit these numbers and you figure out the how. Now, that's within certain rules. Like you said, guardrails, which are your systems, your process maps, your SOPs, your tactical playbooks, all this sort of stuff, right? So I say to the person, here it is, right? Here's all the knowledge and the systems that you need. I want you now to hit a certain target each month or each week, and we'll talk about it. And then you let me know what you need from me as the business owner who's responsible so that you have everything that you need. And if you can't hit a target and something is missing, you let me know, we'll fix it, and then you go off and do your thing, right? And that's how you do it. So the shift is basically from stop telling people, hey, you need to post 3 times on Instagram a week, right? No, you want to tell them, I want you to grow our Instagram to 50,000 followers, for example, right? This goes for any area of the business. And instead of saying, hey, I need you to review this student question. If you're selling online courses, you would say, I want you to keep course completion rate above 70%. And then anything and everything that is needed to keep course completion rate above 70%, this person now should come up with their own solutions. Again, you set them clear guardrails, the systems, the processes, the tactical knowledge, you provide training, all this sort of stuff, right? But they have to do and figure out and put the pieces together. Basically, they need to be able to execute their systems without you. Or instead of saying, hey, check this client deliverable, you're saying, hey, keep client retention above 85%, right? And again, you got systems for this and so on, but this is what you're assigning. I'm not assigning a task that looks like, I want you to approve this refund or post 3 times on Instagram. No, I'm saying as long as my customers are above 95% satisfaction rate, that's cool. That means you're doing your job well. Now, that may or may not include certain things, right? That's up to the person who you've hired to use their systems and playbooks and so on, and then build on that, become an expert, and do it better than you could have told them. Because again, you're just one person. You can't possibly be an expert in 50 different things that need to happen in your business, right? But one person can be an expert in 2 or 3 different things that are related to their core expertise. If they're motivated and properly engaged and so on, that's a completely different video. But yeah, so it's completely different, right? Like in the first column, you're managing activities, but in the second one, they own the result. So you're managing and assigning results, right? So when they own the result, they have to figure out how to get there. They have to think, they have to solve problems. They become the experts because they're giving 100% of their focus and not 10% like you can, right? So you stop being the only brain in your business and you finally have time for strategy. And basically what happens is your team will get a lot more excited and motivated about the work because they feel like they have ownership over their results, right? Everybody likes to have some type of ownership over the things that they do. Nobody just likes to be told there all day, every day, do this and like being micromanaged. It's like soul sucking, basically. It's not great. But here's the problem, right? The moment you delegate an outcome, it's okay, how do I know that they're actually be doing what they're supposed to be doing? How do you track results without micromanagement? And the answer is simple. You need scorecards or performance dashboards or however you want to call them, because you can't delegate outcomes without scorecards, without a way to track the results, right? So basically you go from being in Asana and ClickUp all day, like checking the tasks and like answering comments and following up on people and so on, to managing their activities based on results, based on a scorecard that tracks that result, and that's all you care about. I just care about the result, right? That's basically it. So a scorecard is a simple spreadsheet that tracks key metrics for a specific area of your business. The smaller the business, the less scorecards you need. The more complex the business, you want to have scorecards for different areas inside your business. The owner of the scorecard updates it weekly or a specific KPI, right? You look at the numbers. If it's green, it's on track. If it's red, there's a problem. And they need to provide a solution, by the way. That means ownership. Like they don't just say, hey, this happened. What should we do? No, you're responsible for this thing, right? You need to tell me what you're going to do to address the problems that are currently happening. That's how it works. Like you got a target that you need to hit. If you're off track, tell me, like, what are you going to do? Because I'm not the expert. Remember, you're the expert, right? That's why you're hired. Now, if you need more training, then great, then we'll up-level you. But you can't rely on me to provide you the solutions. That would defeat the purpose of having somebody do the job, right? So basically, without scorecards, you got to keep asking them what they did. Did you do this? Did you post 3 times a week? And they're going to check and that sort of stuff. With scorecards, you just open it and you see the results. Green, awesome. Red, okay, they have a fix, let's fix it. Or maybe it's yellow and it's somewhere in between. Basically, you're monitoring results and not activities. You track KPIs, not tasks. And that's how you can start scaling, right? Because that's maybe 1% of your effort compared to assigning tasks. It's going to be like assign results and track results. That's it. Now, obviously, you need to build the entire underlying infrastructure that's going to allow this to happen, right? Because you can't just hire somebody and say, hey, I want you to hit this target and good luck. No, like you need to provide them systems, training, process maps, SOPs, tactical playbooks, all this sort of stuff. But once you have this and it's, work up front, once you have this, now you can assign outcomes, results, and just track based off that. So now here's a quick way to map out all the areas of your business that you would want to delegate and measure by results, by KPIs, by scorecards, because it can be quite overwhelming to know where you start. But basically a simple way is, you might have seen me show this in previous videos. So a simple way to visualize your business and all the core functions and the processes and the systems that need to exist is to create what I call a company mind map. It's a very simple tool. You create a company mind map based on all the departments inside your business. Like this, that would be the big picture, right? That's your company. You can put your company name in the middle, and then you would just list the core departments. And then you would go one level deeper into each of the departments, and you keep going one level deeper, and you're assigning systems and processes and that sort of stuff until you have everything visualized like this. And that's going to give you a good starting point into thinking, okay, which scorecards should I create? What actually all exists in my business, right? You somehow need to like get it out of your head and put it on paper. This is a great tool to do this, and then everybody will also understand whether if once you have that done and mapped and visualized like this, then you want to start assigning people who are doing the things in your side of your business ownership over that business. So you might use something like a team matrix. That's what we use. That's what I suggest you use. You would just have every person listed in basically a table, a simple way to put it. And then you would assign to them ownership of different systems or departments and so on. You want to like track and measure, and then also you want the person to be responsible over something. You need to like put it down on paper. It needs to be clear. So, hey, I'm assigning the ownership of, let's say, our marketing overall to you. That means you need to solve problems. You need to hit this target. That's your thing. Or maybe it's a smaller process. Goal, you're just responsible for Instagram, not the entire marketing. It doesn't matter. You go back to the company mind map and you look at the branches and you're like, cool, maybe you have a person who's doing Instagram. Or maybe you have a person who's doing all the social media, right? Or maybe one person is doing Instagram, but then the second person is doing all the other channels, plus is the person who's like overall responsible for social media, right? So maybe they're just getting help from Instagram. Or maybe this is an outside partner, but they need to manage it. It doesn't matter. You start assigning people to all of these branches and areas of your business, and you want to reflect that on your team matrix, which reflects also like a bunch of other stuff. But like for the purpose of this video, you want to say, okay, which system does this person own? Which teams or departments do they own and lead and so on, right? All right, so now you got this. You got your systems visualized. You have people assigned to your systems and processes and so on. All right, let's talk about scorecards. So here's how a simple scorecard would look like. Again, in your business, you might have more of them and they might be more complex. This is just to give you an idea how you can start setting it up, and maybe you want to customize it and have your own columns and your own ways of tracking things. It doesn't really matter as long as you have a scorecard and you're tracking it. But you could have something like this. You could say, okay, let's say social media, we were using this example. Cool. We would assign a metric owner. So who's responsible for engagement rate, followers, reach and impression. And maybe you don't want to break it down that granularly. You could just say, okay, social media machine, or you could say, okay, I want this to be just Instagram. And I want this to be just one person, and all I care is the amount of followers. I don't care about engagement rate or anything else. I just care about the amount of followers. Okay, then you just customize this. Okay, so let's say you care about the amount of followers. So the metric owner would be person 1. Now they own it, you put their name here, like that's the person who's responsible. Then you put the current weekly target. I suggest you do this on a weekly rhythm, right? A month is too long. Like there's a lot of things that happen in a month, right? You can't let somebody go for like weeks and weeks without like constant feedback and tracking and measuring the performance and that sort of stuff. I suggest you do it on a weekly basis, and you said, okay, what's our current weekly target? Okay, let's say we're trying to get to 50,000 followers because currently we are at 48,000, whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. You put your own numbers in, and then the person who is responsible for this area and like driving the results, they need to track the results and put them in here week after week, right? So they will come here and they'll be like, okay, this week we are at 48.5K. That's it. And you see here, you have different columns for different weeks. So that like on a weekly basis, every week they come in and they keep tracking, and it's just kind of like endless. So you just add a new column for each new week and you can have everything in one place. You don't have to have different scorecards for January, another one for February, that sort of stuff. Like you just put it all in one thing. You can see the entire history of the account. All you need to do is adjust the weekly target every week, and that's it. And then you can see how the person is progressing towards that weekly target and how they were doing week after week for going months back and even years back. So basically the metric source will probably be Instagram, depending on the activity. For some things, it'll be Google Analytics, or maybe it'll be like your CRM or whatever it is, depending on the area that you're systemizing and delegating. Then here, the current status you would mark, or the person who's doing it would mark, and you say, all right, we're doing great. It's good, it's green because we're on track. Yep, we didn't hit 50K yet, but we're on track to do so. That's basically it. And then if there's any issue, they would say, okay, mediocre, maybe this would be mediocre. Again, this is up to the interpretation for your business. I'm not going to tell you here the exact percentages for each area of the business and so on. If they come this close, then it's good. If they're not close enough, then it's kind of not so good. If they're totally off, okay, then you make it red, right? And I would even suggest that the person who's doing it, they mark themselves. They rate themselves, right? Because they know a lot more about the platform and what's happening and so on. Because if you're the one who's scoring them like this, then again, you're taking ownership of this part, because you're going to need to ask them and you need to understand the platform. It's just like you're too involved. You trust them to rate it. Now, if you see something totally off, let's say they say, okay, we're at 42K, but don't worry, it's all green. You'd be like, okay, that's strange. Like we were quite a bit off. Or maybe like the week before we were at 45K and now it's going down and you got it green. Like what's happening? It's probably not going to happen. You still have that option. And if they say mediocre or red or bad, then in the notes, they can already suggest the improvements, or at least like reasoning what's happening and so on. So that way you go from checking tasks in Asana and following up and asking stuff and having meetings and Zoom calls and asking people, how are we doing here? What's happening here? Let's do this. So let's try that. No, you just open the scorecards whenever you feel like, right? Whenever is your weekly review, you open it up, you go through things and you see, okay, what's currently red in my business? What's currently green in my business? That's how you measure things. And that's how you can start assigning outcomes and not tasks to your team member. So that's basically the simple system. You got your company mind map to list all the processes. You got your team matrix. You got the team members in there and you assign ownership to them. And then you got the scorecards to assign outcomes and KPIs. And then you track the reports. And that's basically it. So here's what I suggest you do. You pick one system that you're currently stuck in. You identify 2 to 3 outcomes for that system. And you might talk with the person who's actually performing the tasks currently inside your business and say, hey, what would be good KPIs to start with? And you just have a starting KPI and you run with it and then you adjust week by week. And obviously as the business grows, you will have higher targets. So you need to keep adjusting the KPIs and so on. And then you pick the person who should own it. That's going to be the person who's already doing it. And even if they're not fully ready, you just assign ownership anyway, because you might not think that they're ready, but once they get into this mindset, they'll become a lot more driven and they just, at some point, they need to step up. So how are they going to step up if you don't give them the opportunity? So you might support them more at the beginning. You just assign the ownership to somebody and you just make it clear that like, you're not here to perform tasks, you're here to drive results, right? And then you'll create a simple scorecard. Just use Google Sheet. Again, you can get our template, or I'm sure you can Google and you find a bunch of scorecard templates out there. And then you just have the conversation with your team member and you say, hey, from now on, you own the outcome. You have the systems and the processes and the training and all this sort of stuff. If you don't have it, that's a different conversation for a different video. But let's say you do have it. These are the playbooks. Use that. Let me know if you need more and start driving this result. And that's it. I'm not going to be telling you if you need to post, let's say 4 times on Instagram or every day or twice a day. That's all up to you, right? Now, if it is important, then you would add this to your KPI stuff, right? So you say, okay, actually, I also want one metric we have is 5 daily posts. Maybe you have a big account and you want to post a lot of stuff all the time. Okay, so that could be a metric, but I would suggest this is like a quantity metric. It's going to depend on your business. You'll know what to do there best. So basically, one system gets one owner and you have one scorecard, either for each of the systems, if it's a big system, or you can just have one for the company at the beginning when you're starting. You don't want to track too many things. Depends on your team and how sophisticated like team structure you have and so on. Yeah, you can create more than one scorecard. So that's it. Again, I got free downloads below. Just check out the links in the description and so on. And I would say stop assigning tasks, start assigning outcomes, get out of the weeds, let your people drive results, and you'll be way better for it. And you're going on that journey to create a business that runs without you one day. So that's it for the video, and I'll see you in the next one.